если вы даете норму боеприпасов.
Two angry authoritarians vying for bandwidth.
Они пришли сюда добровольцами.
Now with the possibility of their two armies in one country. What could possibly go wrong? Well, ask Sudan, being torn apart by warlords and generals. Mercenary boss Yevgeny Progozhin is, according to Europe's last dictator, in exile over at his place, Belarus. Putin mini-me Lukashenko has taken credit for brokering a deal whereby Prigozhin, instead of marching his troops into Moscow, got on a plane to Minsk. And so Prigozhin bows out, retires to a dacha by the lakes in Belarus. Not a chance. Today, Lukashenko appeared on television in one-way conversation with his Minister of Defence. The message: don't worry, the arrival of potentially thousands of mercenaries will be a valuable learning experience for our troops.
Вот сейчас много разговору и болтовни. Вагнер, Вагнер, Вагнер.
There is plenty of talk and chatter. Wagner, Wagner, Wagner. People do not understand that our approach to this is a pragmatic one. If their commanders come to us and help us with their experience on the front line, the assault units will tell us what is important now.
He went on to say that the Wagner Group had been offered an abandoned military base in Belarus. Independent Russian media are tonight reporting that Wagner is building an encampment in the town of Vasapovichi, an hour's drive from the capital Minsk, and about 125 miles from the Ukrainian border. The town, as it happens, is home to a former base.
I would say that, first of all, this is a threat to the independence of Belarus. Secondly, it's also a threat to Ukraine because we don't know what intentions these fighters would have. And of course, it's also a threat to Belarus neighbors, NATO countries, Poland, Lithuania, and other European neighbors of Belarus.
A caveat: we haven't seen evidence yet of Wagner troops actually relocating to Belarus. But if they do, what kind of Wagner will they be? Today, a remarkable admission from Putin. He said Wagner was entirely financed by the Russian state over the last 12 months to the tune of over $1 billion. He went on to say that if there was any evidence of anyone stealing any of that money, wink, they'd be dealt. The one-time collective farm manager Lukashenko has invited a motley crew to Belarus over the years. Steven Seagal for some carrot eating. Gerard Depardieu for some tractor driving. The latest, an invitation to a warlord to potentially integrate his mercenaries into the regular Belarusian army. And the fear, if you're Lukashenko's top brass, is this: that they'll integrate all right, in the same way as a cuckoo would.
Warwick O'Brien reporting there. Well, joining me now from Brussels is the Belarus opposition leader in exile, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. Thank you very much for coming on the program, Svetlana. So Wagner and Prigozhin in Belarus, good idea or bad idea?
Well, from the Belarusian point of view, it's an awful idea. You know, weekend events gave us much hope for weakening Putin, because weak Putin means weak Lukashenko. Unfortunately, the events ended up not like we expected. It's very unfortunate consequences for our sovereignty. Belarus becomes a hostage of Russia and its imperial ambitions. In addition to Russian troops and nuclear weapons, now we will have Russian thugs and criminals on our territory. But Belarusian people will not give up, and we will fight until all Russian occupiers leave Belarus and until Belarus becomes a free and democratic country.
There are, of course, reports, as you know, that the Wagner Group, as it still exists, is bigger than the Belarusian army. Is there a danger that you fear that actually Wagner could become more powerful than Lukashenko and his military?
I think that, Belarusian soldiers, Belarusian regular army, I don't think that they will welcome Prigozhin presence on our territory, because our army don't want to fight with Ukrainians. They want to save our country free and independence. But we really don't know the consequences of such decision of person who seized power of Lukashenko, and don't know consequences for our country. Just imagine thousands of ex-criminals will go through our country doing whatever they want, and nobody will forbid them to do anything. Now Lukashenko has to show full loyalty to Putin, because Putin saved him back in 2020. And Lukashenko looks like a peacemaker, but he is not. He's a person who betrayed Belarusians, who betrayed Ukrainians, who thinks only about his own power, but not about our country and our independence.
The way you describe the criminals, taking up residence in Belarus is absolutely terrifying, potentially. Do you think that Lukashenko can control Wagner? Because he said, of course, it would be great to use their expertise for his army.
I doubt that in case, for example, Prigozhin would like to make coup in Belarus, Lukashenko can resist them. But of course, now he needs the Wagners to, as I said, to show loyalty to Putin and look like he saved the world. But I think that Lukashenko himself doesn't realize the consequences for himself.
Finally and briefly, Svetlana, do you think that Belarus is still a sovereign, independent country, or is it effectively part of Russia?
We already see the signs of crippling occupation of our country, and this is personal Lukashenko who is selling our Belarus piece by piece to Russia. There is no other most pro-Russian person in Belarus than Lukashenko. Now he's telling about Belarus as a part of Russia, that he wants to save peace from Brest to Vladivostok. So he's telling about Belarus as about joint state, but we want our country to be separate, independent, and sovereign country. And of course, Lukashenko.
Okay.
Yeah.